Uncle Ron and stuff. This is replacing the run capacitor on a DeWalt DD55154 4-gallon Type 1 air compressor. This is the one that has 2 tanks and a little control panel on the front. And I wanted to talk about it for a few minutes before I show you. But I've had this thing for at least 10 years. It was fine for a long time, and then it started balking, not wanting to start, and it's gotten worse and worse. So anyway, some of the aspects of it, I do like it. I don't want to trash it, and but it does want a 20 amp circuit. It wants to be connected to a 20 amp circuit. It says right on the unit that it draws like 14 amps. That's probably a startup, and 14 amps will trip a 15 amp circuit breaker, and I've had trouble even, it works fine on a 20 amp breaker. But if the 20 amp breaker is GFI and arc fault circuit interrupter, it will kick the 20 amp breaker because of the arc fault. Apparently those kind of breakers are sensitive to motors, and so you really need a 20 amp circuit. I don't know why they did that, but anyway, that's first thing. The second thing is that it has a reset button on it. I've seen, when I looked around on the web to see if anybody had what they had dealt with, the main little video showed that there's a reset button on it, and yes, there is. It's on the very back of the assembly, and it's a button on the right hand side. It's kind of hard to see, and if you didn't know it was there, I think it's rated at 15. I forget now. It might say 20 on it. I don't know, but there is a reset button. If the button is popped out, it means it's been, the breaker has tripped on the device. So you have to push it back in. Obviously you should turn it off before you try to reset it, but there is a reset button. Okay. Next thing, there is a run capacitor. On most motors, AC motors, you have what's called a run capacitor. And what it basically does is help the, it puts the, I want to say puts the motor out of phase. It delays the AC to it enough to start the rotational magnetic part of the motor. The main point being is it has one, and these things fail. Run capacitors are the lifeblood of HVAC technicians because they fail commonly on outside compressor units, and they have them as well. They probably have more than one. Sometimes there's a run capacitor for the compressor, and sometimes there's a run capacitor for the big fan that's out there. And sometimes they're all in one unit. It's called a dual run capacitor. Okay. On this particular DeWalt, there is a single 60 microfarad run capacitor. Unfortunately, and I've always had, I like DeWalt stuff, but I'm not liking how they did this one, because it was designed to be assembled, manufactured, shipped, and not repaired. I'm sure most people would have to take this compressor to a shop to get them to work on it, and it would, you know, I'm not saying I'm going to tear the engine apart and we'll replace the rings in the air pump piston or anything. All I'm doing is a run capacitor, which I think is bad based on the symptoms. And my symptoms are when I flip the switch to on, sometimes it'll hum. It may even turn over a time or two, but then it stops and it hums. That is a symptom of a bad run capacitor, or you're not on high enough I tried hooking this one up to like a 50-foot extension cord off of a known 20-amp breaker. And you lose too much, you have too much resistance in the long extension cord. And it drops the voltage and increases the amps, and pop goes the breaker. Okay, this one, the DeWalt, and I'll show you, it's, the run capacitor should be relatively easy to get to, but it is not. And I'm sure most people will have to take it to a shop. Now, I did see the video about the guy finding the circuit breaker that's built into the system. And he took the whole rear structure part off, the handles and the flat cover that sits on top. I didn't want to do that, and I didn't do that. But if you did that, you probably could get the plastic covering that surrounds the engine and pump, because on the end of the electric motor there is fan blades, and it is blowing air over the whole unit to cool it off, the motor and the piston-driven air pump. You have to get that off to put the run capacitor in, and I'll show you. It's crazy. I didn't like it at all. I don't like the design that they used on this one, and I'll show you what tools you need to get to the run capacitor. The run capacitor from DeWalt, if you buy it from them, it's like $100, and that's crazy, Looney Tune. There's nothing special about the run capacitor other than it has a threaded bolt on one end to be able to mount it, if you will, strap it down to part of the frame. Okay, that's the only thing special. A 60 microfarad, you can get them for $20 or less. I mean, even the ones that go in AC units don't cost $100. Yeah, if you bought them from the HVAC guy, they do, because he marks them up. But there's nothing special about that. I did get one, and I'll show you. It is interesting. This is the first large capacitor, run capacitor, that I've ever bought. It appears to be in a plastic case. I haven't thought about it, but every other capacitor is in a metal case. Now, that allowed the capacitor, if it gets too hot, it bulges the end. Now, the run capacitor in the current DeWalt does not show any symptoms of being bad. It's not bulged at either end like they sometimes will do, but I'm still going to replace it. Other than that, the run capacitor, you don't have to buy DeWalt. You can buy, or you can even buy a DeWalt, not from DeWalt, for less than $100. That's crazy. This is a relatively easy, but it's hard, but it should be easy fix if you have the hum at startup symptoms I'm exhibiting. You'll need some tools. You need a 7mm and 8mm socket and wrench, and you also need a 13mm wrench to get the nut off the capacitor. Those are the tools you need, and then you're going to have fend angle moving the plastic around to get to the run capacitor to be able to get it out to repair it. Anyway, this is run capacitor replacement on the DeWalt 4-gallon DD5, what was it, 55154, 4-gallon type 1. And there apparently is a type 2 and a type 3, I don't know. This thing's 10 years old. But this is for type 1. I'm sure all of the others have a run capacitor too. You might have to look at a diagram to ascertain where it is, and it may be under tons of stuff, and you have to take things apart. That's enough for now. I'll now use my iPhone to actually show you the unit ready for insertion of the run capacitor. Uncle Ron stuff, the DeWalt air compressor run capacitor, replacement. This is part 1. Okay. Okay, Uncle Ron is stuff, and this is the DeWalt 55154 Type 1 electric air compressor unit, and I'm in the process of replacing the run capacitor. Here is the new one that I bought, and as I explained in the intro to this, it's not easy to get to. You see what I did, and what I did, I can get to the run capacitor. Now, I explained I like the DeWalt stuff, but this particular case, I don't like how this was designed. This particular shroud that fits over everything and comes all the way up to here, I cannot get it off without probably disassembling, taking the top off of here. That's probably, if I took the top off, which means, you know, all this stuff here, to take all this off of here, I could probably get the top to come out of there, but that's crazy. I didn't want to, but I did take this connection off, thinking I could get it up past it, but I couldn't, and I wound up, and they were laying here somewhere. There was a little tab sticking right here that kind of extends a little bit past here, and I wound up cutting those off, thinking here's a tab. This is what I cut off. I cut off this tab thinking, okay, that'll let me get this shroud out of the way. But no, there's no way. I mean, yeah, take this whole top assembly off of here, whole top assembly, and you probably can lift it up. And I didn't want to do that, so I tried moving this around enough that I could unscrew the bolts on the end here and see if it had long enough pigtails on it to be able to get to it, and it does. This is crazy. You probably can't see, but I wound up pulling this whole assembly. This sets in there. It won't move right now. One of the reasons I cannot get the cover off is right here is the fan. You see the fan blades on the front of the motor, and I can't get the shroud to matter, the flex or pull or whatever. I got it up out of the way enough, but I can't get it to come off because it hits the front. And the other thing to tell you is, you may be able to see it, there is a lip right here on the very front. This is the front of the unit, but down here is a lip that goes all the way across here and flushes up against this part, the lower part of the unit, and you have to like sort of pull the motor back and push the plastic shroud to the front to get it to lift up off away from the mount at the bottom. I have no idea how much trouble I'm going to have to get it back on, but the main point is I do have access to the run capacitor, and it is interesting. You see the old one, and it's got a metal sleeve around it, and that just pulls off. I haven't looked if these are identical in size or not. They should be. This run capacitor carries the same DeWalt replacement number as this one, so it should fit. But I don't think I've ever seen a plastic one before, and this is obviously it's a metal, and I'm not sure what this is about. Maybe a heat conducting, I don't know what else it would be, but anyway, I'm going to try to slide this off and put it on to the new guy, and unfortunately I'll have to put the shroud back in place and reconnect this before I can ever even try to see if that fixed my problem. And the problem was it would hum when you tried to fire it up, the on off switch. And just as a reminder, I did see a video on the web that was explaining that there is a circuit breaker. If you bought this used, you may not know that, but there is a breaker in there, and it's rated at, it says 16 amps. It's got a 16 on it. If it breaks, this will pop out, and you have to push it back in to start it. Right now, it's not tripped, so that is not the problem I had. But anyway, there is a breaker, there is a reset button on the back of the compressor that you should be aware of. I've never changed the oil. The oil says good. It doesn't leak. I don't think that's my problem. Everything is relatively clean, and since it had the shroud over it, you know, it shouldn't be. If you look at the fins, you can't see them very well, but the fins of the compressor down there look clean. So I don't think it's that. I think it's the run capacitor. But as I said, I can't seem to, I don't see any bulging. It's not bulged on either end, which is typical for capacitor failure. But anyway, I'm now going to replace that run capacitor. And as I explained earlier, you're going to need a 7mm. There are 2 screws that require 7mm. There's 8mm screws that I had to have wrenches on. I couldn't get my little ratchet in there. And finally, you'll need a 13mm to get the nut off of the capacitor. And then you got to play topology problem of trying to get this guy up far enough and away that you can get access to the run capacitor. So that's part 2 of Uncle Ron's stuff on this compressor unit. And when I get it all back in place, I will show you what it looks like then, and then we'll try experiment and see if it works. Okay. You can see I have the run capacitor back in there. You see the white one. And I have the shroud, air shroud, sort of pulled down over it, but I'm having a problem getting the motor and compressor to go back in, and I think the problem is down here. That side is clear. If you look at the heavy metal base, there's 2 of them for the motor and compressor. There's screws you can see right here, and there's another one sticking up out of the bottom, and this one on the left side is well clear of the screw. Right, I think I think it's hitting it and now allowing me to move the motor back into position to be bolted. So I'm going to try to prise the motor up, lift it up at that end, and see if I can get it past that screw. And then align the motor and everything, the shroud, and put it back together. Okay, by lifting the rear of the motor and compressor unit up, I got it over that screw at the bottom, and now I have the flange plastic shroud, if you will, down over it, sort of, and I've got the first screw started, and not an easy thing to do. This motor, you see at the very bottom, I can't get a good picture of it. There, this guy, the way it sits, it's not perfectly curved here, so you can get it at an angle, and you have to align, you have to move the rear of the motor up and down a little bit. The alignment is hard to do. But I did get the first one started, and again, I don't have, it's tough because of the wheel, and I didn't want to take the wheel off. You shouldn't have to completely disassemble something to repair it. It's crazy. Again, I did get alignment enough to be able to get the first one of these in. Hopefully the others will be better, but I don't know. So there is an alignment thing that you have to deal with. Once I got the motor to move past that screw sticking up out of the bottom, then I have plenty of wiggle room to move it left and right, up and down. And you have to play with the shroud at the same time. I'm not going to tighten it all the way up because I probably have to move it. But that's where we are now. I have the shroud sort of on, and the upper hole is, let's see, right here. Where is it? That's the upper hole, and it's somewhat aligned. If I pull, you see how the whole thing is still moving? The upper hole would align now. I don't know if the back one down at the bottom will align, but by having the bottom screw in, I do have alignment for the 7mm that goes right here. So I'm progressing. Oh, rightly or wrongly. When I went to do this side, I had trouble with the rear one. And I finally got it in, only to find out the front one hadn't passed through the plastic. So I had to loosen everything up. And this time, I cut out the notch at the bottom of the plastic. So this one now fits down over, and it'll tighten up and be good. And this one now will fit down over. And it doesn't have to be a hole as long as, you see, and it'll tighten up tight enough. There's enough edge on the plastic, it'll tighten up. So I did modify it, but maybe that's the last thing I got to do. Okay, I'm faking it because I've already tried it. I did have trouble getting this back on. You know, that's hot. I don't know. Haven't put the other ones in yet. They're gonna even line up there. I don't know. But anyway, I'm gonna try it and I'll show you what happens. I'm plugged into a 15-amp circle. It runs and it's running on a 15-amp circuit. It wouldn't possibly do that before. So it was a bad run capacitor. And now I gotta figure out how to get, oh, there's the hole. I put the two 7mm in and I think I'm done. I'll go around and stuff. Okay. This is final notes on replacing a run capacitor on my DeWalt 4-gallon air compressor. And before this, you saw it running on a 15-amp circuit, and it fired right up, and so the run capacitor was bad. This was not a fun job. I'm not happy with the overall design implementation of the DeWalt compressor I have, the DD55154 type 1, I believe. It's a pain in the yin-yang to replace the run capacitor. It shouldn't be this hard, but it was. 7mm screws, 8mm screws, 13mm bolt, and finagling the plastic shroud out of the way. I could not get it off. That's just crazy time. I don't want to take the whole thing apart. I had to uncouple the compressor output that goes to the tank, and it didn't want to fit back on when I went to. That's the reason I don't like taking things apart, is they may not go back together just right. The whole thing is, you know, bolt coming up through the bottom, which catches the clamp, the foot. There are 2 feet on the front of the compressor, and it caught one of those. I pulled it out to try to do the shroud. It's just crazy stuff that was unnecessary. My only modification I did was, and I think you might contemplate it, is the shroud itself has holes in it, and it would have been better if they made it like a channel, just, you know, a channel, and then you could start the bolts into the metal of the motor, and that's how the little lip at the bottom, the frame, bolt goes through, the screw goes through that and into the metal of the motor compressor unit, and you can sort of see that. And I think if you cut out the bottom of the shroud, just the very bottom, so that you could slide the shroud down on top, once you have the bolts installed, I think that'd be a much easier way to go. You should be able to view it that way, and putting it back together would be a lot easier. You know, put the bolts, don't tighten them all the way down, but put them in as everything is mounted, and then slide the shroud down over the 4 screws and tighten it up, and it isn't going to go anywhere. So I would suggest that. Capacitor did not look bad to me, but obviously that was the issue. I didn't do anything else. I will note that I started it up with the air release open. I haven't flipped it shut so it would start building pressure. That could be a problem, but I think I'm okay. I was afraid I was going to trip the 15 amp breaker, but I didn't. And there's stuff on the 15 amp breaker already running, like my computers I'm using right now, and so on and so on. But anyway, it didn't break it. So try it if you want. I don't know what it would cost to take it into a shop and have it done. It took me 3 hours maybe. I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing, and struggling this, struggling that, and 3-hour job maybe, and it shouldn't have been anywhere near that much. Hopefully run capacitor will never go bad again on me. I don't have to do it, but I do know sort of how to do it now. And again, one of the things is the motor compressor unit sort of sets in there, has feet on the front, so you can slide it back and move it forward, move it around a little bit, and it's wonky. It'll go like this and that and that and this to line the screws to get it back in again. It is wonky in that sense, and the front feet, one on the right side will catch a screw at the bottom and be in your way. So you don't need to really pull it out that far, because you're not going to get the shroud off anyway, but you need to get the shroud lifted up enough so you can get to the run capacitor. You don't need to take the whole thing apart. Anyway, that's enough of this. This will be the final. This is Uncle Ron's stuff, the old DeWalt compressor capacitor to replace, and I hope somebody sees it and maybe manages to get their old, but still, who wants to throw a thing away? It's massive, it's huge. I see they still sell them like $500 or $400 or something like that. I got this one free, so I'm not complaining, but you know, what a pain in the butt. I'm not happy with DeWalt about this one. Today is the 14th of October. Bye-bye.